And we're back. It's me, Preston, your co-host. Your host. Co-host Raymond Venuya.
What's up, y'all?
We're back. Week 3. We're in the grind. I didn't write an intro this time. I'm kind of unprepared. I've been a little bit busy, but today we're going to talk about Spider-Man. All that good stuff. Spider-Man Far From Home released. Spider-Man Far From Home released on Tuesday, July 2nd, which is kind of weird. I've already seen it twice. I've got a lot of thoughts on the film. I'm ready to release those thoughts and get all that out, as I'm sure you are.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'm excited for this one. Since we started 3 weeks, we don't even need an intro. We're 3 weeks in. They know who we are. Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I've been looking forward to Spider-Man for a while.
Yeah, this is one of my most hyped films of the summer, of the year, really. So I'm very excited for it. That being said, before we get into that, I want to talk about something just on my mind that I want to get off my chest real quick here.
Does it grind your gears?
It grinds my gears. I'll say that. It grinds my gears. Really butters my biscuit. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative thing to say.
I could have sworn that was positive, but we get the picture.
I'm from the South, so I've just heard it. But point being, it annoys me. Some people, there was a casting. Let's just say there was a casting that came out this week. A big casting news came out over a certain Disney live-action remake. I will not say the name, but I just want to make a point before we get started. If you're listening, you should know that if a character's race does not intrinsically, if it's not intrinsically essential to who that character is, or the story doesn't demand that the character be a certain race for the story to progress, it doesn't matter what race they are.
For real, for real.
So if that's something that you've been thinking about recently in light of recent events, I don't know, stuff happens, but I just thought I would bring that up because there are some characters where their race matters, you know.
Yeah.
The Disney princesses such as Tiana, who, by the way, first black Disney princess wasn't introduced until 2009. That's over 70 years
Is that movie
after
really
the first.
That new? Holy crap!
Yeah, it's new, and that movie is over 70 years after the first Disney princess movie. So, take that as you will. But she wasn't introduced till 2009. Her character is very much rooted in her culture and in her race. So you can't cast a white Tiana. But if we're going to do that, I saw there was a Twitter post that was like, so why don't we just make Tiana white? And that's like, okay, then we can make all the white princesses black. That seems like a fair trade. It's not, because there's only one black princess. Point being, she should be black, right? If they ever end up making a live action Princess and the Frog, she should be black. You know, that her character's tied to that. Another Disney princess, Merida, she's white, but her story is very rooted in Scottish culture, and that's a part of her character, so it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to make her a different race. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying here?
That makes sense to me, at least. I mean,
hoping the listeners are picking up on what I'm putting down.
For real.
It just seems like the logical thing. So,
Yeah, all I'm going to say.
And those characters, even beyond that, one more thing. Those characters are human beings. So they actually have races. The character in question, maybe you have guessed by now, is not a human being.
They're a fish.
So does she even have a race? Do we know? No, I don't think we know. I mean, she's got a color of skin, but I mean, she's not. She's a fish. Like, yeah. I'm done.
Yeah,
you can give your 2 cents if you want.
All I'm gonna say on that one is just if their race isn't important or essential to their character, it really does not matter what race they are, whether they're white, black, yellow, Puerto Rican, or Haitian. Thank you, Tribe Called Quest. But yes, it really does not matter. I mean, why can't, I don't know, let's just throw out an example. Ariel, I don't know, be black.
Who's that?
I don't know.
Who's that?
I don't know,
Just
the
putting it
first
out
one
there.
that came to my mind. It's just like, why not? Like, what's the big deal there? Now, if you made Mulan white, there's a problem there. If you made Mulan black,
Right,
there's
yeah.
a problem. That's a very
That's a
Asian
problem.
character that needs to kind of
Yeah.
be Asian. But I don't know. For me, it's just like, yeah. And there's an argument I saw on Twitter too. Was, yeah, well, in the original book, okay, I get you in the original book, but does her being white have anything to do with the character or struggle or anything? No, yeah, I don't think so. So I mean, I don't think it really
Yeah.
matters. And
Yeah.
for me, honestly, the last thing I got to say is y'all got to stop, sticking to the source material like it's the law. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
They can make her
okay to
purple,
change
blue,
things.
red. I don't care. Do whatever.
yeah.
She's a fish.
But
Anyways,
that's that.
that being said, let's move on to some more maybe lighthearted discussion. If you took issue with the last 5 minutes of the podcast, sorry, but we're gonna move on.
No, I'm not sorry, but yeah, let's go for it.
I'm not really sorry either. Let's talk about Spider-Man: Far From Home. So, like we said, this is a movie that we've been hyping up for a long, long time. But if you're listening right now and you haven't seen Spider-Man: Far From Home, I'm going to give you a spoiler warning right now. The rest of the podcast is going to be heavy spoilers for Spider-Man: Far From Home. So, if you have seen the movie, stick around. If you haven't seen the movie, you can get out, or if you don't care, then keep listening. We're glad to have you along.
For real, I mean,
so
I don't
let's-
care about spoilers, so even if I hadn't seen
Yeah.
the movie, I'd have kept listening because I love spoilers. Unless
Right,
it's a
so
Nolan
if you're
movie,
like-
but yeah,
If you're like Raymond and you don't care about your spoilers, then you can stay. So let's dive right in. How do I go about this? Let's just say,
initial takeaways. Let's just go.
give me
for
your
it.
overall thoughts. You go first. Your overall thoughts on Far From Home.
It was really good. I mean, yeah, later in the show we'll do our ranking, but it's pretty up there for me in terms of the Spider-Man movies and in terms of MCU movies in general. I mean, yeah, it was just really well made. I mean, I think the cinematography, I know they had some of the people who worked on the Amazing Spider-Man 2 on that cast now, right? Or on that crew for all the web slinging and stuff like that. I thought
Yeah, they had them.
Yeah.
They had a Amazing Spider-Man 2 crew on for some of that, and a lot of the visual effects team.
Yeah,
was the
'cause
same team.
and that was like the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, the visual effects and like the cinematography and just the way it moves. I was like, this looks really good. And that's the one thing that for me, it took a giant jump from Homecoming to Far From Home. But that was like the first thing. The second thing was, damn, Spider-Man's really nailing it with the villains. I mean, Mysterio, I love that Mysterio wasn't like his major twist of him being bad wasn't the biggest part about the movie. So for people who aren't, casual moviegoers, the ones that know a little bit more about comic books and stuff, we were like, oh, okay, at least that wasn't the one thing that was supposed to like hype us up and be the main turning point, because it's like, oh, well, we could have guessed that. But then I have friends who were like, Mysterio was the villain? Oh my, that was crazy. And I was just like, this is why, yeah, that was my thing. I was like, you know what? That was a really good move on Marvel's part, or on the writer's part. I was just like, wow, that was really good. But aside from that, I really enjoyed it. But what about you? What are
let's
your
just
initial
say-
takeaways?
Let's say if a character's in a Spider-Man movie and he's wearing green, odds are it's the villain. Just saying,
Wow, I never
Mysterio,
thought
Green
about
Goblin, Vulture, comic book Electro. So yeah, just most
Wow,
of
that's great. I never thought
most
about
of-
that. Yeah, you're right.
yeah. I think that's a reason that they went with the blue look for Jamie Foxx's Electro.
Which
Doc
was-
Ock is even
that was
green.
dope. And Doc Ock is
Yeah.
green. He wears a green coat. Yes.
Yep, it's a lot of green. So if you could have told by the colors, Mysterio was the bad guy. Shocker. So my overall thoughts on Far From Home, I get very frustrated thinking about this movie for a couple of reasons. I love Spider-Man. I'm a massive Spider-Man fan. He is my favorite character ever in anything. Maybe I love him. I love him to death. I've never. I can sit down and watch any Spider-Man movie and love it. It doesn't matter whether it's good, whether it's bad. Given I don't think we've had a whole lot of bad ones. We'll talk about that later. But I can watch any Spider-Man movie and I love it. I love it. I love Spider-Man and I love the character. He's such a legend. You know, he's such a big deal. So to me, Spider-Man means a lot. So I go into this movie and I really want to like it. And I think I'm going to, you know, because I like most Spider-Man movies, and I just come in not with a high expectation, but just with a just knowing that I love the character. I won't say I expected the movie to be great, but I will say I expected to have a good time, you know, and to
interesting
to love it more than I did, because I didn't love this movie. I like it. I'll say I like it, but I don't love it. I don't love it. There's a lot of good, but for everything that's good, it's got something that's bad, I think.
Interesting. You're still like one of the few people I know that have that opinion.
I know, and I don't want to have that opinion. I want to like it so bad, but I just don't. I just don't like it as much as I thought I would. I want to love it. I mean, I do like it for some of the things that it is, but I don't love it.
It's like Kevin Smith and his thing with Batman versus Superman. I read this thing. It's like he just kept watching because he's like, I know that if I just keep watching it, I'm gonna love it at some point. He's like, because I want to love this movie.
That's exactly me. I literally, you know, I postponed our podcast recording time because I wanted to watch the movie. We're recording this 2 hours later than we originally planned because I wanted to go back and watch it. And I did go back and watch it today, and I went in and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like it this time. I know I am. I'm gonna like it. And I still didn't. I just got out of it no more than an hour and a half ago, and I feel the same way I did. I saw some good things. For instance, my second time around, I didn't dislike Mysterio my first time around, but I liked him a lot more the second time.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else in the movie got a little bit worse. Or the things that I thought maybe I'll like this more now, I didn't. I felt the exact same way.
What was like the biggest one out of all those things? Like the thing that just like you're like, oh, like you just watched it again. You're just like, what was it?
Right from the get-go.
Uh-huh.
In the first 2 minutes of the movie, and this is a joke, and it's a funny joke. I laughed. But in the first 2 minutes of the movie, they play this in memoriam video. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they show all the dead heroes, and they're playing "I Will Always Love You," yada yada yada. And I laughed the first time. The first time I saw it, I laughed because it's a funny joke. Like it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I felt so bad about myself for laughing because
why?
Because I'll tell you why. Because when you look at Infinity War and Endgame, these are two huge emotional comic book films. I mean, Endgame, I cried the entire last 40 minutes of Endgame, just nonstop.
Yeah.
Like literally, it was just so much emotion was evoked from me from those movies, and they have all these incredible sequences that really mean a lot to the fans. And they take these characters in Infinity War and Endgame, and a lot of them die, obviously. You know, you lose Tony Stark, obviously. He's the big one. He dies, right? So does Black Widow. Vision dies in Infinity War. You lose Captain America in Endgame just because he went back to live a normal life and came back as an old man and stuff. So you have these really emotional sequences where you're losing these characters that you've grown up with and you love so much. And to see all of that be trivialized in the way it was in Far From Home, and for them to set the tone with that storytelling decision, for them to set the tone with that as a joke, that hurt. That was I was just like, I don't know how I can laugh about this. I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind the difference of tone. Sorry, I'm ranting a little bit, but I don't mind the difference of tone in the MCU. That's something that makes the MCU great. Is you've got all these movies, and a lot of them have different feels and different styles to them. You know, you think about Captain America: The Winter Soldier compared to Guardians of the Galaxy. They're very different movies, right?
They're on opposite ends of the spectrum, yeah.
And they were back to back. They were in the same year those two movies were released, and that's something that makes the MCU so great. Is that they have a very broad style of movies, I think. So I don't mind going from this dark, heavy tone in Endgame to this lighthearted tone in Far From Home. The problem is how they do it, is because they take these dark events that happened in Endgame and they make that the focus of the lightheartedness in Far From Home. Does that make sense?
That's funny.
It's not the problem. I don't have a problem with the movie being lighthearted. I enjoy that part. It's a nice breath of fresh air.
Just that part specifically for you.
It's the fact that they take and they kind of continue it a little bit throughout, and it's just kind of like how can I take Peter's grief seriously when the movie doesn't take Peter's grief seriously?
Wait, what do you mean they continue it throughout? Like, what do you mean by that?
The whole thing about the blip.
Oh yeah,
that joke. It's a running joke through the whole thing, and it is funny, but it's also like there's a lot that you can explore with this 5-year gap that they either choose not to or they turn into a joke, you know? I don't know.
That's funny, because actually, that was one of my notes, too, on something that I liked about the movie.
What was it? Tell me.
It was because, alright, so the blip and this idea of them, like, having this really poorly put together in memoriam, you know, with, what do you call that song playing in the background. I actually thought, you know, for what this movie is trying to be and what this script is, I was just like, that's really smart, actually. Because isn't that, like, no offense to any of our younger audiences out there, but wouldn't that be something that a high schooler might actually do? You know, it's like, after a while, you're trying to move on from it. So, yeah, you kind of try to just let it go and, you know, try to have a good time about it. And, I don't know, it's just one of those things where you're just like, everyone came back minus those heroes, so of course they're going to call it something a little funnier, you know, like the blip, because yeah, for them it feels especially just like, yeah, we're 5 years apart from some of our friends now, but of course it's just like we just came back. It's like at least we're not, you know, gone. And I don't know, I feel like that is just a way that someone a little younger, someone like in high school might actually react to that, you know. And then I thought it was pretty funny too, that little part in that scene where they show footage of them in dodgeball, and then when the people who were playing band came back from the blip, yeah, they got smacked in the face. That was funny.
I did like that. I thought that was pretty funny.
And then with the Avengers thing, I don't know, a part of me just like, it is one of those things where it's just like, we've seen some pretty bad jokes about celebrities that have, you know, gone. And it took a while for us to get the jokes, but, you know, after a while we did have the jokes. And so for me, it's just kind of like, no, that's kind of realistic. It's like, yeah, at some point they would have turned them into really bad tribute videos and memes almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that high schoolers would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I have a problem with the idea that it's realistic of them to do that.
Uh-huh.
It's just the decision they make that they're making that lighthearted. I don't know. It's just, I feel like that's part that they didn't have to include in the film, for me at least.
No, definitely. I got you.
That's just, and I have other problems with the film that I wish I didn't have, but that was part of it that kind of set the tone. And I couldn't get over it the whole time. I was like, why are we making fun of this? I don't know. But
well, what else didn't you like?
Moving on. Since you asked.
Yeah, I want to know. I'm curious now.
There's a couple things. Here's one.
Mm-hmm.
In Homecoming, Peter is all into Liz and stuff, we know. And there's this whole arc with him wanting to go to the dance with Liz and all this stuff, you know. Yada, yada, yada. That's his high school crush and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't even hint. Like, you see MJ in the film, right? In A Homecoming, we have MJ. But the problem is that in Homecoming, we have MJ, and she makes these, she'll make fun of Peter. She pokes fun at him all the time just because she likes him. And it's kind of hinted at that, So we know she's kind of got a thing for him.
Yeah.
But then in Far From Home, the movie just starts off with him liking MJ. Like he's fallen for her and he's got this crush on her. And it never really explains why he likes MJ. Like there's a short bit where he's like, she's funny, she's dark, la 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 la, and then it's like boom, like literally like 5 to 10 seconds, and then it's pretty generic stuff that he says in the first place. But then we don't see any of that stuff implemented in any of their interactions to where it's like, oh yeah, he genuinely enjoys being around her. Given I do like the awkwardness, the teenage awkwardness. I think Zendaya and Tom Holland have great chemistry, but in terms of the script and the writing, I don't think there was much given as to why we should expect this relationship. Like what brings these two people together other than it's just a small crush, and I don't know.
Wow, that's actually a really good point that I never thought about. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'll give you that.
The movie almost expects you to think, oh yeah, Peter Parker and MJ.
Mm-hmm.
That's canon.
It's one of those things where it's like, the two highest billed actors, that isn't Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie.
Right, yeah.
They have to like each other.
We all know Peter Parker and MJ. That's a classic couple, even though this MJ is a little bit of a different character.
Yeah.
And like Michelle Jones, that's why she's MJ. But at the core, she's MJ, Peter Parker and MJ, and we know they are going to be together. But I think the movie just kind of expects you to understand that without explaining why.
No, definitely. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's like for people who know Spider-Man and MJ or Peter and MJ, that's a thing. I think it's okay for them, but it does leave a little left for, I don't know, I guess more casual viewers to just be like, well, wait, at what point did he start to like her? Or maybe we should have seen that at least a little bit. All right, yeah, that's fair.
I would have liked something in Homecoming to tie it to the movie. I think Far From Home, I expected Far From Home to be a proper sequel to Homecoming. It's really not. It's more of a sequel to Endgame in a way. And
it is. No, definitely.
I don't totally mind that, but there's a lot of things that are in Spider-Man Homecoming that Far From Home abandons, and it's just like they go a completely different direction. It doesn't make any sense to me,
I have one for that. I mean, there's one thing that bothered me a little bit. I didn't even think about it until my friend pointed it out to me.
I think I know what it is, but tell me.
Why is it that, I mean, at the end of Homecoming, you end off with such a what the, moment where Aunt May finds out he's Spider-Man, but then in the beginning of Far From Home, we don't even get to touch on that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like,
oh my gosh.
It's like, they're cool now. Oh, she's cool with it. There's no, you're out there, fighting Thanos, and you've been lying to me about the Stark internship. It's just, okay, cool, you're Spider-Man. Can you come help me with this charity foundation really quick, please?
There's a line in Spider-Man Homecoming where he tells, when Ned finds out that he's Spider-Man, and he tells Ned, he's like, please don't tell Aunt May. That's the first thing he says. And he says, please don't tell Aunt May. If she finds out, it's going to ruin her life. After all she's been through, she can't know. And so, it's referenced a couple times, multiple times, that Ben Parker obviously existed in this universe. They even show his suitcase, which I can get into that later if you want, but I have a whole nother issue with that. But we know that, like, it's established in Homecoming that Aunt May can't know because Aunt May's going to freak out.
And then she
doesn't freak out. She's completely supportive. She calls him on the trip after he fights Hydro Man, and she's like, so how was it? This is why I packed your suit. You should have done it. How's your plan going with MJ? And it's like, you should be worried. This is something that's so unique to Spider-Man. You can't do this with other superheroes. We don't know how Batman's mom reacts to him being Batman. This is something that Spider-Man, we can see what Spider-Man's mom, in essence, his aunt, but we can see what Spider-Man's mom feels about this. And for her to have gone through that with Uncle Ben, she should logically not want it to happen to Peter. She doesn't want to go through that again, So
For me, it's like
the fact that
yeah.
she
Go
was
ahead.
just so supportive and just like, yeah, this is fun, like totally cool with it. I was just like, what, why?
For me, it's like I understand the why. Like if they're going for the whole like, no, she's just gonna be really supportive about it and understand where he's coming from. That sits well with me. But for me, like we should at least see that though. That's something that if you're gonna leave off on a cliffhanger like that at the end of Homecoming, I feel like that's something that should at least be addressed at some point in Far From Home. You know what I mean? Even if it's a little thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And
But okay, cool. We're on the same
I
page
don't
on
like
that
it.
one.
Yeah. It was ah that makes me upset. But yeah.
There is one more.
Let's
There's only one other thing though that I didn't. That for me it was just like it was there to be there. But here, like you say, go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
say your one more thing real quick and then we'll move on.
Aunt May and Happy, like
Yeah, that was weird.
I don't know. For me, it's not that even that like it was weird. Like I get what they're going for, like, but at the same time, just kind of like kind of slowed down the movie for me. Is that just me? But yeah,
it was part of the movie, and I think that so this movie was written by the same people who wrote Ant-Man and the Wasp.
uh-huh.
Another recent MCU movie that I have a lot of problems with that I wanted to like a lot more than I did.
Uh-huh.
And it's very evident that these movies were written by the same people. To me, it's very evident because both of these movies have one big problem, I think, and it's that they want to remind you, they are forcing you to remember that this movie is lighthearted. Like there is joke after joke after joke, and a lot of them land. Like they're funny movies, but
Oh, yeah.
they lack the emotional depth that I really wanted to see in both of the movies. But even in Far From Home, there's just so many jokes. And I like the jokes. I like the funny movies. That's a staple of the MCU. It's what makes the MCU great is their humor.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie just didn't have like the whole there's just plot lines that are only existent for jokes. Like the Ant-Man Happy thing. That's nothing more than a joke. That's all it is. And that's the only reason it exists. And the Ned and Betty thing. I love that. I love that plot point. It was very funny. The whole Ned and Betty Brant relationship thing on the trip. That was funny, but like there's nothing more than a joke. And they didn't develop those characters at all in the whole movie. They are the same exact way that they were at the beginning of the movie. Because they're reduced to a joke the whole movie, So I just think they really, really, really remind you over and over that it's a lighthearted movie.
No, I feel. I mean, yeah. I mean, for me though, that's something that has been going on in Marvel. I mean, it's just one of those things where, personally, like I don't mind the jokes as much, but of course, coming off of Infinity War and Endgame, it was just like, of course, those weren't two very joking movies. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I don't know. For me, it's just like I get your point though, and I don't have a problem with the humor either, but for it to be a whole plot line just for the joke, yeah, that was a little excessive. I mean, for me it was just like I think they could have snuck in the jokes and made it still funny without having to do those things. And yeah, I feel like they kind of did just leave Ned out there to dry a little bit. I mean, because he was really great in Homecoming, but then in this one it was just kind of like, oh, okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like I don't know. I like his character. It's just he didn't have much going on for him in this movie.
Right. And there's a lot of the characters in this movie. That's what they are. I think in a lot of ways, Peter Parker is like that in this movie. And the way that I see it, this movie employs like a final swing of sorts, where they have this scene at the end. It's something a Spider-Man movie does a lot. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 did it really well. The Raimi films did it as well. So they'll have the last scene and it's Spider-Man and he's swinging through New York. It's triumphant. It's a big moment. And you feel something in that scene because you know what the character just faced and how the consequences of those things have affected him and how he came out on top.
And he just keeps on getting up and going.
Right. But I don't think I didn't feel like Peter Parker changed from the beginning of this movie to the end.
What?
I
really?
think I don't see it, because what I can see is there is that scene with him and Happy, right, where he like has this big emotional scene, and then he kind of takes it upon himself. He makes his own suit and everything, and I like that scene. That had the emotion whenever he kind of exploded on Happy. I loved that. I wanted so much more of that in the movie. Like, that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, go on.
I just didn't. I don't feel like he's a different person than he was at the beginning. He's very much, when he falls down, he doesn't pick himself up. He gets picked up, and I'm kind of. This isn't 100%. This is my thought, but I am also taking this from some other people that I've seen on Twitter and YouTube. They've said this, and I agree with it, is that when he falls down, he doesn't pick himself up. He gets picked up by Tony. He gets picked up by Happy. He gets picked up by the Avengers. He gets picked up by his supportive friends. And that doesn't change his character that much to me. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't feel triumphant in that final swing moment, just because I was like, well, but how did he change? How's he different?
Yeah. I think for me, I felt his character changed because it was really about him like stepping up, because now it's like there is no more Iron Man to back him up, there is no more Avengers really to have his back. It's really, at least for now, in this movie, it's really just him. And I mean, yes, Happy's there with the plane and everything, but I just feel like, but that doesn't, all that does is, gets him out of that one spot, But I felt that seeing him have that breakdown and that conversation with Happy, and he's like, Tony wouldn't, have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after him. And I don't know, I thought that scene of him building the suit, in the plane, and then going down there and solving it by himself and really figuring it out, on the fly, and then using his Peter Tingle to fight Mysterio. I really thought that showed it was about him stepping up and saying, no, like, I can do this, because the whole thing, in my, like, at least from what I got from it about in the movie, was really just about him like having to choose between what do you want. Do you want to just be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, or are you gonna be an Avenger? And that has to choose. You have to choose between, are you gonna try to protect your friends? And when he tried to do that, he almost failed. Well, sort of. It was all the illusion thing at the Ferris wheel. But anyways, it's like, or are you gonna step up and really try to do this by yourself, and you have to stop worrying about them because you have to be an Avenger. And I felt like this was his time to shine. It was really just like about him stepping up to that plate and saying, you know what, I am going to do this. I can do this. And I don't know, for me, it was just one of those, it was like what they said in Into the Spider-Verse. For him, it was like, it was his leap of faith moment, because for him, it was just like, you don't know if you're going to be ready to fill Iron Man's void. And that's what he was worried about. And then even in the Mysterio scene, when he had him like in that first Mysterio sequence, I wouldn't call it a dream sequence, but that first illusion sequence, and he had him, it was just and he was just like, maybe Tony would like still be here. I thought that was kind of what it was going for. It's just like, well, now it's his turn to really just fill that void. And then that's why for me it did feel triumphant in the end, just because he was able to use his spider sense and really save the day. And for me, that's what I thought the progression was just that he's going from, I'm a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, to no, I'm an Avenger. I'm stepping up for Iron Man because he's gone now. So I don't know. I still felt the progression, but I do see your point.
Yeah. I understand that too, and I wanted to feel that way, but I just couldn't. I didn't get that same feeling from from the movie that a lot of people seem to have. And I don't want to sound like I'm hating on the movie. I enjoyed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I wanted to like it a lot more than I did. So if you are listening to this and you're like, oh my God, Preston hated this movie so much and he's just being a hater, I'm not hating on this movie. I just had some problems with it that I didn't think I'd have. If you like this movie, great. If you think this is the best Spider-Man movie ever, great. Like, I love that for you. I want you to like movies, I mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And if you love this movie, then that's wonderful for you. I just didn't, unfortunately. But that being said, let's talk about something that I did like a little bit more, Mysterio. So that, I say this with full confidence. After 2 viewings, everything, I am fully confident in this. That first sequence with the Mysterio like acid trip, when he really, really takes over, like before Peter gets like hit by the train afterwards, like that sequence, top 5 MCU sequence, top 5 MCU scene.
I saw this thing. It was like, no scene is ever gonna top that mind-bending scene from Doctor Strange, and Far From Home said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, whoever was in charge of the visuals on that or storyboarded it or whatever, get them on Doctor Strange 2 immediately, because oh my God, my jaw. I'm not a movie talker, but after that scene, my jaw was dropped the entire time. And after that scene, I looked over at my dad and I was like, that was the greatest scene ever. And it was like that. Oh my, I couldn't stop talking about that scene if I wanted to. I could talk about that forever.
No, I remember
that was
watching
awesome.
That. Yeah, I was just like sitting there and I was just like, I can't believe this just is happening. And I'm just like, it's not real. But then for him, of course, it feels so real. And then I love that part. He's like, I know this isn't real. He's like, do you? And then he like drops MJ. And he's just like, oh, I was just like, oh my God, like he really got him. And then, I don't know, for me, that was like one of the things too. Just like, I really loved it because it showed sort of like, not how weak Peter is, but just kind of like how vulnerable he is, because that's how much he cares about like his friends and his family and like the people he cares about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like it really just emotionally exposed him.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that scene. And I like Mysterio for the most part. I thought he was a pretty good villain. I don't think he topped Vulture from Homecoming. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, cool. We're on the same page.
I want to move on. Yeah. I want to move on real quick and talk about before we rank all the Spider-Man movies. I want to talk about the credit scenes in this movie because they're huge, and we hyped them up 2 weeks ago in our first episode and theorized what they would be. We were wrong, but
we were hella wrong.
I was wrong. Yeah, I was definitely wrong.
I think I said it was the multiverse thing. Yeah, I was super wrong.
Yeah. We don't even. Yeah, whatever. But I'll say my thoughts on the mid-credit scene. I love J.K. Simmons back as J. Jonah Jameson. That's amazing. I love that. That's just great. That was a great surprise. I was really happy to see him. I was happy to see him back, and I hope that they bring him back in more Spider-Man movies. That being said, I don't mind the storytelling decision to reveal Peter's identity to everyone. I don't mind that so much as I mind when it happened. I would have really liked to see this relationship he has with MJ. I would have really liked to see that fleshed out a little bit more before they made that decision. I would have liked to see a whole movie of their relationship and that struggle, because that dynamic of Peter having to hide his relationship or having to hide his identity is such a big thing for Spider-Man. And, in the comics, he has revealed his identity. So, like, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's really interesting and definitely could open up some really interesting things in the future of the MCU. So I am excited for what they do. I just wish they would have waited a little bit to do it.
Got you.
I
mean, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it yet, just because, we don't see the aftermath of it, of course. But for me, I just hope it isn't another, like, Homecoming moment where there's this big reveal, and then when we get Spider-Man 3, that, it's just kind of like, yeah, there's no way he's Peter Parker,
Exactly.
and then they all
Yeah.
just walk
Part
away.
of me, yeah, part of me thinks that John Watts just wanted to do another end credit scene that mirrored the first one, where it ended with a main character saying "What the f," and then it cuts away.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man said it, like Peter said it at the end of this one too. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what they do with it, but it opens the door for a lot. Real quick, let's talk about that final credit scene, that last one.
Oh God, yeah. That I was like, what?
Why? Why did it happen? It's funny, I guess. It's a fun little gag. I love seeing Talos. He is one of my favorite.
Talos, yeah.
Whatever. He's one of my favorite characters that the MCU has introduced in the past 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. I love him, and when I saw him, I was super happy because I love him, and I love Ben Mendelsohn's performance as him. He's so funny. I love him. But I was also just kind of like, why? Why do that? I don't know. It's fun, but it seemed kind of pointless, I guess.
I think for me, it's just that, because they said that this is the movie that ends this phase, right? So when we go to the next phase 4, of course, we're going to get something. So for me, I feel like, well, for me, I thought it was just like, that just means we have to have something big coming. I mean, we could have, what is that comic run with the Skrulls? I'm really
Secret Invasion.
Yeah, I was about to say Secret Wars. I was like, no, that's not right. Yeah, Secret Invasion. Yeah. There we go. That could be a thing, but I think Sword could be a thing. I saw that on Twitter, but then the thing that someone pointed out to me that I thought was really interesting was, okay, so if he just revealed that he's a Skrull, right? How does that mean that this entire time Nick Fury wasn't Nick Fury? That what if it was Talos the entire time from the Avengers Initiative, like from the beginning? Like,
that's another thing is we don't know how long he's been a Skrull, so maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Has Nick Fury been in space this entire time? It's just like, or what about Maria Hill? Is she in space with him? Like, where'd she go? But
I don't know. I guess maybe they'll explore it more. I kind of think it's just kind of a throwaway thing. I think they'll.
I want to say you're right, but I feel like I've learned from Marvel, there's no way it's just a throwaway, because even Howard the Duck, I thought that was a throwaway, and he showed up at least to make a cameo in Endgame. So for me, this means something.
I hope not. I hope it's not a throwaway, but we'll see. So that being said, let's move on. We're going to rank all 8 Spider-Man films plus Venom, just for fun. I don't know. It's fun to throw it in there. So, so we're going to give our rankings for all of them. I know that both of us actually have some unpopular opinions on a couple of these movies. So, let's get into it. I'll let you go first. What is, counting all the Spider-Man movies and Venom, what is your number 9?
Spider-Man 3. I mean, it's so hard for me to watch that movie. For really? Very obvious reasons, yeah. I mean, that, like, when I say that, I mean, it's not as bad as Fan 4 Stick, if we're going that far. But no, I mean, I just feel like it's really, and just keep in mind with a lot of these rankings, I feel like a large part of it is Tobey Maguire. I love Tobey Maguire as an actor, but I just don't think Spider-Man was his strongest performance even in any of those 3 movies. And then Topher Grace too, and once again, I love Topher Grace, if he's had good roles like in Interstellar, even the entire run of that 70s show. But his performance as Eddie Brock was just, I couldn't buy into it. And then the shoehorned Gwen Stacy in there, I don't know, I just didn't find it enjoyable. I loved, the one thing for me that I did enjoy was Sandman. He was really fun to have in there, and I thought that out of everybody, he had the best character development. And for me, that's pretty much all there is to say about that movie, and that's the sad part, because I really wanted to like it a lot more, especially when it came out. And even rewatching it now, I'm just like, man, I really wish I could have enjoyed this movie more. But what's your number 9?
My number 9, is Venom. I think every single Spider-Man movie has been better than Venom.
Mm-hmm.
I just I think Venom is an anomaly when it comes to recent movies because it very much feels straight ripped out of 2002.
Uh-huh.
When you look at the script and the villain, it's all very much like what? And then even Eminem is rapping in the credits. Like, it's so weird.
Hey man, that
but
was a good track.
I'm not upset about the song. It's not bad, but it's just weird to me. It just feels everything is from the early 2000s, and it's very odd. That being said, the CGI and the cinematography in Venom are great. They're incredible.
Okay,
and the
I was
action
like, yeah, they're
scenes,
pretty good.
I really enjoy those.
Yeah.
But everything else about the movie is a letdown to me. So, what's your number 8?
My 8 is Venom. Mainly for
Okay.
those reasons too. Like, yeah, you're right. It does feel like this movie could have came out and been really good in 2005. But for what it is now, the one thing that really does save it is Tom Hardy. His performance as Eddie Brock is really good. And his relationship, as corny as sometimes the writing is for the symbiote, or for the Venom symbiote, I feel like he had to, that the way that those characters are written together and the way they bounce off each other is really good. Do I think their dialogue can be a little corny? Yeah. And can a lot of the movie just be like, yeah, a little old. Yeah. Especially the villain. But
oh, he's terribly written.
Right? Yeah.
It's so bad.
It's just
Carlton Drake is one of the worst written characters ever.
And so for me, that's why it's at number 8. I mean, for me, it's like, at least it's still fun to watch. Like, I can still watch it and it's fun to watch because, yeah, you like the action, you like seeing Venom on screen. But if we really have to be, judging it as a film, yeah, I'd put it at number 8. What's your number 8?
My number 8 is Spider-Man 3. So we just kind of
we're in the ballpark.
Flip-flopped.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man 3, I feel it's weird. I think it takes everything from the first 2 movies and flip-flops it because I really like the cinematography, I really like the colors, and I think that MJ is a really good character for maybe the first time in the series, and I think Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst actually have the best chemistry in that movie. As opposed to the other 2 movies, their chemistry is god awful.
Maybe it's because in Spider-Man 3 they hate each other for a little bit.
Maybe the scenes that they had, it was a lot. Like I believed it a lot more when they were together. So I think it took that and it flipped it, but then it also took the good things about the first 2 and flipped that. So the characters and the story are bad. I just think they're bad. The story is so messy, It's got too many subplots going on and not enough time to develop them. Venom comes out of nowhere, as does the whole Harry subplot. And then the Sandman subplot, like you said, I enjoy it too. I think it's maybe the best, most fleshed out of them all. I think he would have been a better, if it was just him as the villain, that would have been solid. But I know that's what Sam Raimi wanted, but the studio interfered and said, hey, we want Venom in this movie, we want this. So they really, I think the studio is to blame.
So it's the
from
studios
everything
that
I've
get
read.
you, man.
It is, and I think they ruined Spider-Man 3. But it's interesting to me because I think it just takes some of the good things about from the first 2 and it makes it bad, and then it takes the bad things from the first 2 and it flips them and it makes them good. But overall, that leaves you with more bad than good, I think. So, yeah, let's move on. What is your number 7?
All right, my number 7 is Spider-Man 1. For me, it's just, I feel like the movie just doesn't age well. When it first came out, of course you really enjoy it. But for me, it's just the cinematography. I just can't get past it. It's really, I hate to say it, for lack of better words, but yeah, it's a little hard to watch. But of course, I feel like that's just because it hasn't aged well. I mean, there are movies from the 60s that are still beautiful to watch, like 2001. Yeah, that's an old movie that's still really good to watch, and even cinematography wise. But for Spider-Man 1, it was just really hard for me to keep watching that. I feel like maybe there's like I said, I don't know everything about the movie making process and casting or something, but something that got to me even when back then when I watched it was they're supposed to be in high school or something like that, and everyone looks like they're 40. I was like, wow, they're I was like Flash in that movie. He looks old. I was like, wow,
Yeah,
that's a
they
big
are. They
dude.
are. They are all too old for sure.
I was like, that's a big dude.
Um,
And then what else? Of course, I loved the Uncle Ben storyline going. That was, I think, the highlight of the movie. But aside from that, even Willem Dafoe was good, but some parts of his performance, I was just like, I was kind of confused. Not gonna lie, like as to like what was going on. Like, was he crazy or what was up with that? I loved his
yeah,
scene at the end. That is that combine that scene with the scene right before Uncle Ben dies. Those are like my favorite scenes of that movie. But I still wouldn't say Spider-Man is a bad movie though. Like that, I think for context that should be clear. Like I don't think Spider-Man's a bad movie. It's just not as good as the remaining six. But and then of course, yeah, Tobey Maguire's performance with Kirsten Dunst in that one, it was I just couldn't do it. And then the one thing that still gets to me is the swinging mannequin. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That part's pretty funny. Um, yeah, for sure. My
What
number
is
7 is Spider-Man: Far From Home. I
wow.
I like. Yeah, it's sad, but for context, I think that the other 6, like the 6 that I'm gonna talk about that I put above Spider-Man: Far From Home, are all really good.
Hmm.
In my opinion, I think it's hard to beat those. I think those are all really good. Um,
Yeah, we've kind of been lucky
I
with
think
all the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, I agree. I think Spider-Man 3 is the only bad Spider-Man movie. I think Spider-Man Far From Home is decent. It's good, but it's not great. And I think the remaining 6 are all really good. So, moving on. What's your number 6?
All right, so my number 6 is Amazing Spider-Man 2. I just
Okay.
it still blows me away. Like I can't see all the hate that this movie gets. Like there's oh, I'm not gonna lie, there are some lines I'm just like, oh, okay. But aside from
You're a
that,
fraud, Spider-Man.
yeah. I mean, poor Dane DeHaan though. He's a good actor, and sometimes you just
Yeah.
get stuck with bad direction or a bad script, and it happens.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a
Yeah.
line in there that's "I love you because I love you." I mean, that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty bad. But I mean, aside from
Yeah.
those things, the cinematography is great. The visual effects are great. The score is great. The story minus Peter's parents out of that. The only thing that did service for was him finding his dad's stuff. But aside from that, yes, Peter's parents in the beginning was really not needed. I don't know why that was there, but
Yeah.
aside from
The
that,
action scene with them in the plane.
yeah. But even Electro, I liked his character. I felt like he had a good reason to be upset. He was just kind of, the truth is, yeah, he was just kind of a weird dude who really, really, he was kind of like Syndrome. He really idolized the Spider-Man, and then when he felt like Spider-Man betrayed him, of course he's gonna get angry and go nuts on Spider-Man. And then with Green Goblin, I mean, the Dane DeHaan's character was just, I thought he was really well written too. He just, he had a bad relationship with his dad, and then things go south. He finds out he's getting sick too. He feels like he's getting betrayed by Spider-Man, and so, and of course when he finds
Yeah.
out that it's Peter, it's like, you're my friend, man. Like you're what the hell? Like we're supposed to be friends. Like why aren't you helping me?
Mhm.
So it's just like
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And then another thing is too, like I don't see the whole they shoehorned Rhino in there, right? Rhino, the mech suit.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's
Yeah.
just like I don't think that he's just shoehorned in there. I think he's just not supposed to be that big of a deal. It's just another day in New York City for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But
For
yeah,
sure.
what about you?
My number 6 is the Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Oh.
I think, and I really like that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk more about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 a little bit later, but I really like the Amazing Spider-Man 1. I like it because I think the first act of that movie is pretty slow. It takes a while for that movie to find its footing and get going, but when it does, it really does. It really picks up. And obviously Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, their chemistry is off the charts, incredible. Just
Mm-hmm.
they take maybe a script that's not incredible and they make it incredible, and I love that. Um, but yeah, I really like that movie for sure. It I think their chemistry makes the entire movie. I think their chemistry is what makes the movie good. Like it carries it so that it's not bad, but it also propels it to where it makes it good. So yeah, that's my number 6. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Spider-Man 2. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I like Spider-Man 2. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's just like I said. I just can't get past Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I feel like it's not like I just can't believe his performance sometimes as Spider-Man. As Peter Parker, yeah, sure, but as Spider-Man himself, sometimes no, it's really hard to see past that. And then I like Doc Ock sort of. A little part of me was just, yeah, he went crazy because the chip in his back broke. I mean, yeah, he had, of course, the events leading up to that, but for the most part, yeah, that just it struck me the wrong way because he was such a nice guy and he was a good dude, but because
yeah.
he had this AI on him, like he goes insane all of a sudden. And then
Yeah, I get it.
the other thing that got to me too was the way they talked about Peter losing his powers because he didn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. And I got that, is one of those things. It's like it's a choice. It's hard to choose to be Spider-Man when choosing to be Spider-Man is so hard. But at the same time, I felt that him physically losing his powers while he's swinging in the air was a little corny for me. It was a little on the nose. And for me, it was more like it would have been a lot more. It would have been a lot more powerful if he actively made the decision, even with the powers. I don't want to do this anymore. But because it was just I'm losing my powers while I'm swinging. I don't know. For me, it felt a little corny. So for me, it's not, and it's not like I said, it's not a bad movie. I just don't think it's as good as the remaining 4. But
Yeah.
what is your number 5?
My number 5 is Spider-Man 1. I really like it. I think it's just a hair better than the Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there's just so much heart in the movie. The characters are incredible. Everything is just developed so well. My only gripe is that MJ is kind of a damsel in distress a
Yeah.
lot of the time, and she's like that in every single one of these movies, and that's my biggest gripe with her character. But other than that, I really really like the characters in the story. I think they're developed so well. I'm just the heart in that movie and in Spider-Man 2 just ugh, I can't put it into words how much I love it.
I mean,
But
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I feel like that is the one thing about the original Raimi trilogy is that, yeah, Uncle Ben, especially in Spider-Man 1, really does set such a high bar for what's going to happen next in Peter's journey. And I feel like they do a good job, at least, of him following out on that, with great power comes great responsibility. I feel like that the whole movie really does a good job of continuing that mantra and, really going with it
yeah,
and centering around that, even in Spider-Man 2.
yeah, for sure. All right, so what's your number 4?
So my 4th is The Amazing Spider-Man 1. For me,
Okay.
it's just, yeah, you can't get past the Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone chemistry. They're on screen together. They do really well. They bounce off each other. But aside from that, I do love that we still see the Uncle Ben storyline and how it sends him into this rage. And of course, he's lost for a while, but he knows that his uncle wouldn't want him doing this. And then I just felt like too that script moves really fast.
Yeah.
That movie feels really short, and in terms
Mhm.
of it being really epic and paying off in the end, that crane scene is really good because it finally is just like things are starting to work for him, and especially because it was like you remember how he got mad at Flash, right? After
Yeah.
his uncle died, even though Flash was trying to be nice, it finally felt like the world gave him one because he did something right, because he helped that guy, he saved his kid. it finally felt like this city is with Spider-Man. And I don't know, for me, it felt like that was such a boost for Peter's character. It's like, no, like I can do this. And then I actually really like the villain in this one just because I liked his motivation. I mean, so he lost his arm, and he was trying to find this cure, and of course he's getting upset and angry. But for him, it was really just a matter of science. It was about we can be better than what we are next, and he really does become that mad scientist. And for me, it's not. I understand it's like not the strongest motivation in the world, but it was still on screen and within the context of the script, it made sense. But
yeah,
and for me, it really
I like him too.
Yeah, and he was a really good actor too. And so for me, I just thought that in the Amazing Spider-Man 1, Peter just really came into Spider-Man, and that's really what it was about. It took basically the heart of Spider-Man 1 and did that with better cinematography and better acting for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I have it so high.
I can see that. My number 4, people will not like this. My number 4 is Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Ooh.
No one likes this movie, and I don't get it. I love this movie. I think it's so good.
It is so good.
It's so that was one of my big thoughts after watching Far From Home and being so meh about it. I was like, I just want to go home and watch Amazing Spider-Man 2 because that does Spidey right in a way that I feel like I felt that Far From Home didn't. And people would slap me in the face just to hear me say that, but I really think it's true. Like I love Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's super fun. I will say the subplot with Peter's parents and all that was unnecessary. You can cut that out. But everything else in the movie I really like. I like Electro. I like the new Goblin. I like the Rhino. He was small, and I think the problem that people had with it was that he was marketed to be a big character and he ended up small. But I like all the villains. I love Peter in this movie. Peter and Gwen Stacy, I think their relationship has taken a new heights. I really felt it whenever Gwen Stacy died in the end. Oh, God, a lot of people are like, that should have been their own movie. Felt out of place. No, I felt it. That hurt. Like, that was real. That was so raw. And that was just a part of the movie that I absolutely loved. I don't have enough good things to say about this movie. I just really like it. Let's move on. What's your number 3?
One more thing, especially because the whole movie was about him trying to, like, that part where he was just like, do I have to lose you too? About Gwen, and then in the end he loses her anyways.
Yeah.
That killed me. But, okay.
Yeah.
Number 3 for me is Far From Home. Far From Home is really good. I mean, yeah, we just spent the whole episode talking about it, so I won't say much. But great villain. The music, I feel like, is okay. But for the most part, great cinematography, great story. The first third of the movie is a little slow. Explaining, I'm going on this school trip. I really like MJ.
Yeah.
It's slow.
That was another thing I didn't like about the movie was the first act. It was just like, okay, let's get going.
Yeah, but Act 2 and 3, it's pedal to the metal. Like, you're going. I was just like, oh my God, that was really good. So that's why for me, yeah, I spent the whole episode talking about it. So, but yeah, Far From Home, that number 3.
My number 3 is Spider-Man: Homecoming. This is actually one of my top MCU films is Homecoming. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who I've noticed the people who tend to share my opinion on Far From Home in that they wanted it to be better and just felt kind of meh about it and didn't love it. Mm-hmm. They don't like Homecoming either. And I don't really get that because I might be the only person that I've seen that loves Homecoming and was disappointed in Far From Home. I love Spider-Man: Homecoming. I think Vulture is incredible. He's a top 5 MCU villain, and no one talks about it anymore, and I wish they would because he was so good. What puts him above Mysterio for me is that he has a personal tie to Peter. Mysterio, I never felt the stakes in Far From Home, which that's a different movie, so I'm going to talk about Homecoming. Vulture has this personal tie with Peter, being that, one, he knows who he is, obviously. But two, this bond that what's the word? They have this mutual, person in their lives who they both really care about in Liz, and that makes the dynamic between them so good. There's stakes, and it's so serious because if Vulture kills Peter, Liz is hurt. If Peter kills Vulture, Liz is hurt. They can't win. Neither of them can win. So it just makes it makes for a really good villain. The Vulture twist, when he opens the door at Liz's house, we've talked about it before on this podcast. We'll probably talk about it again because I absolutely love it. That's one of the only scenes that had me just so shook in the theater that I was just unbelievably shook. I couldn't even. But I really love Spider-Man: Homecoming, a whole lot. That's my number 3. What's your number 2?
Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, for me, the only thing I have to add on to that is I just loved how, like, for me, the only thing that really just puts it above Far From Home is, Vulture, because he's such a good villain. Yep. And for me, it was just that he's so relatable. For me, it was like, Mysterio was like, I'm doing this for revenge because Tony, he screwed me. He laughed at my life's work and called it barf. But for Vulture, it's just that, no, he's just like, I'm just a dude trying to provide for my family. Yeah. And there's nothing more. I love that. There's nothing more relatable than that. And for me, it was just like, and you're right. It was like, none of us can win. And for Vulture, it's like, I'm already not winning because I have to do this just to provide for my family. It's just like, I mean, he's happy clearly doing it, but of course, is it ideal? No. But for me, Homecoming really and for me, I love that it was a fresh take and that a part of me wishes that we did get the Uncle Ben storyline, but a part of me is also just like, well, maybe Tony is what's more important to Peter, at least in this MCU. And so that's why for me, Spider-Man Homecoming it was just really good. And of course, the music and everything, the cinematography, down to the mechanics of it, is just really good. And then of course the script is really tight as well. But that's my number 2.
Right.
Go ahead. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Spider-Man 2. I think this movie, and I understand your gripes with it, with the acting and the cinematography, but for me, the acting, it serves its purpose. It's not incredible performances, but I'm sold on it. I like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man more than a lot of people do. But this movie, to me, is so close to perfect. I love everything about it. I love Peter's arc. I love Otto's arc. Otto being Doc Ock, obviously. And obviously, like I said, the heart of the film is just through the roof, in my opinion. It is so evident how much this movie meant to the people making it and all this. I mean, ugh. But I love the arcs. The thing that keeps it from being perfect for me is 2 things. One, Kirsten Dunst and Tobey Maguire don't have the chemistry that they had in Spider-Man 3, which obviously that wasn't enough to save that movie, but it was enough to knock this movie just a tiny notch down to where I don't think it's a perfect movie, because they do still have the worst chemistry ever. And then the whole Harry arc in this movie with James Franco, I'm not 100% sold on it. I don't love James Franco as Harry Osborn, and I wanted to like it more, but his arc in this movie also kind of brings it down another notch. But yeah, so that being said, can we both agree that the best Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
It is the reigning champion, yes.
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse, that's just something else, man.
That's a perfect movie. It's flawless.
Oh, yeah.
It's flawless.
Like,
I can't find a flaw.
Yeah, I mean, it moves so quick. As soon as Miles gets into the car for his first day at school, it's just like, boom, you're running. And you don't even know it.
It's so good. Something that's interesting about Into the Spider-Verse that I have noticed so I have a lot of friends, and I try to like movies more than I dislike movies, and I typically do. But I have a lot of friends who dislike movies more than they like movies. I know people who are, in my opinion, overly critical of movies, and it could help them a little bit to lighten up, But even including them, I've never seen anyone who didn't like this movie.
Same.
Like, this is so universally loved in a way that almost no movie is. Maybe The Dark Knight. Like, it's at that level to where it's just everybody loves it, and I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I loved Shamik more, but he did this one, and I was like, man, you really are the perfect Miles Morales too. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's the thing too. Especially for it to be an animated movie, that's bold. But I don't think this movie could have been done any other way. Like, this movie had to be animated. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just, the script is just really, it's so tight. I can't find a flaw in it. There isn't a corny line. There isn't a dull moment. Everything matters, and I think that's important.
Yeah. Every single thing is so good in the movie. I love it. I think it really is flawless. You can't pick out any flaw in the whole movie, and that's so hard to find. But yeah. So this has been our thoughts on Spider-Man. Let's finish it out. One word. No, not one. 3 words to describe Spider-Man Far From Home. Go.
3 words to describe Far From Home. Oh, man. Emotionally riveting. And I guess fun. It is fun. I mean, I don't know. For me, it's just like, it really does put you in the shoes of Peter's, and it really does have you feeling like, oh my God. For me, it had me feeling really anxious. I mean, it never had me feeling really sad, which I guess that's okay. But it did have me feeling for Peter and anxious. And it is still a really fun movie. Maybe a little too much fun at sometimes, but it's still fun. Go ahead. Your turn.
Yeah. My 3 words are good, not great.
Ah.
It is good.
That's fair.
I think it's good. I just don't think it's great. So, yep. This has been our thoughts on Spider-Man Far From Home and our rankings of all the Spider-Man movies, including Sony's Venom. So, thank you for listening. If you want to follow us on Twitter, my username is @PrestonCMoore. Raymond is Rvinya, RVINYAH. We also work for a website called The Cinema Spot. If you want to follow that on Twitter, it's The Cinema Spot, just like I said. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but it'll be some juicy stuff for sure. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, y'all.